working together. If we have to work together to put this money together, then let's do it. Because it's for all students. All students, not the Salisbury students. It's for all students.
Good evening, Donna Hanlon, Superintendent of Schools, President Cannon, and council members. Thank you so much for your willingness to listen tonight to everyone who's in the room, whether they're speaking about the general fund budget or the capital budget. I have prepared remarks, but I do want to make just a couple of comments first, and then I'll condense my remarks. As far as the last years in the capital plan, we had hoped to address Mardella issues through a number of systemic projects. And through the feasibility study that was completed, we determined, the School Building Commission agreed, as did the Board of Ed, that the better approach was a replacement building. And that's what's in your capital plan. So we're very strategic in what we're doing. You know that from Imagine 2022. We don't believe in coming to the council, to the county executive, or to the county council, and just ask you to give us money to do whatever. We're very strategic. In fact, in our capital plan, we reduced that to 3 major priorities. Only 3, because they were our top priorities, including Beaver Run and Mardella and West Side Roof. As far as West Side Roof, I want to make sure those of you, because I know many of you are from the west side of the county, obviously, you're from Mardella. It wasn't the board's decision to not move. Well, the reason that the board is saying it would be difficult to move forward with the West Side Roof is because we are not receiving state funding, and that's the majority of where the funding is coming from. So while we are continuing to advocate at the state level to get money for that roof, we recommended this suggestion to Mr. Culver and his team at our last meeting, that perhaps, since we're not receiving the state money for that roof, that we could apply that money. If you're not going to give the full 700, give us enough to get started with the planning. My preference would be that you put it all back in. You know that from having spoken to me. But I want to thank you again for listening, but I also want to thank you for the support, thank the community, everyone who's here and others in the community, and for the council last year for your support of Imagine 2022 with the $500,000 above maintenance of effort. That sent a strong message in our community that that you believe in the plan and that you're not going to settle for status quo. And you shouldn't be settling for status quo in terms of the instruction of our students or the facilities in our county. So I hope that you will listen to everything that has been said this evening and reconsider your position on not only Mardella, but that you will support the county executive's recommendation to fund $800,000 above maintenance of effort for Imagine 2022. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kilmer.
Are there any additional comments
Is this for anything or just for?
No, not yet.
for the budget or for the capital improvement program?
Good evening. I'm Joan Smith, President of the Wicomico County Council. County Education Association.
Come on over.
Thank you for that recognition
There you go.
earlier this evening. You know, we are a group that's organized and very dedicated to advancing the quality of public education. And I'm asking that you continue County Executive Culver's action to fully fund the proposed Board of Education operating budget. In March, the outpouring of community support for students enrolled in Wicomico County schools now and in the future was recognized and given relevance by the county executive. Mr. Culver announced full funding of the proposed Board of Education budget, thus making reality our superintendent's plans for universal pre-K and support for the recruitment and retention of highly qualified educators through increased salaries. WCEA thanks Mr. Culver for taking that action to make Dr. Hanlon's vision a reality. And WCEA encourages our county council to, without hesitation, do the same. Further, WCEA appreciates the attempts at clarification made by our county executive. I think I hear indications of forward movement with a timeline of strategic planning for the Mardella Middle and High School project. I'm a survivor of Bennett Middle, and I do mean that literally. And we do need to make sure that all of our schools are cared for and brought up to the same standard as the new Bennett Middle. West Salisbury Elementary School, we had great thanks for that new building. It shouldn't matter what grade our students are in, all of our students deserve that safe, highest quality learning facility that can be afforded them. WCEA and our community will also continue to encourage and remind state legislators of their promise to support Maryland school construction with funding for Wicomico County Public Schools. Meanwhile, again, thank you in advance, because I know you're going to do the right thing, for choosing to provide opportunities for our students and for our community by fully funding the operating budget, and for doing everything in your power to move forward with the capital plan. I'd also like to ask, since it's a question of money, we hear a budget every year. What about the actuals that have been spent in the last 3 years? If we're looking for money, I know I go back into my budget and what I actually spent. Can we not look at what has actually been spent in the last few years to find more money to fund Mardella?
We did that this year, that's how we saved $3 million.
Where can we find that information? Where can we find that information? Is it online?
We've got the spreadsheet, we went back 5 years, we built the budget this year, we did it on a 5-year run rate, as opposed to building a budget on a budget, we went back and looked at actual expenditure by each department, and that's how we built the budget.
Ms. Hurley, may I have a copy of that? I know you know my email.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Are there any additional comments, public comments on the budget or the capital improvement program? Mr. President, I believe that concludes the public comments.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley. Next item on the agenda. Excuse me, it's you.
The next item on the agenda for business tonight is Resolution Number 68, 2019, authorizing the county executive to accept a grant from the Administrative Office of the Courts of the Maryland Judiciary in the amount of $65,720 to enhance security at the courts complex. And we have Melissa Beatty here, Court Administrator, if there are any questions.
Entertain a motion from council to approve Resolution 68, 2019. So moved. Second.
Second.
Discussion. Thank you. Sorry.
Good evening,
Good
Melissa
evening.
Beatty, Court Administrator, Circuit Court for Wicomico County.
Great. If you could just give us a real quick overview on this. It's a grant, so.
Certainly, these are grant funds that we are able to apply for each year with the Administrative Office of the Courts to offset the cost to the county of maintaining and upgrading security within the circuit court. In this particular funding request, we are requesting additional access controls in the older part of the courthouse, as well as upgrading software because our original system has reached end of service life.
Okay. Any questions from council? We appreciate you seeking out the grants to begin with. That's a heck of a process.
Thank
know
you.
that. Entertain a motion from council to approve Resolution 68, 2019.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Resolution passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. President, that's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley. At this time, we open the floor for public comments in general. If anyone has any comments that they would like to make, come to the podium, state your name and your county of residence and your concern.
Good evening again. My name is Donnie Waters, Wicomico County resident. Man, really impressed by the passion and all the people that came out for Mardella. But as I said earlier, all means all. I understand the county has a rainy day fund
Right.
with overflowing money, and at least there's an opportunity to draw out of that if there is a will to do things. And let me also say, let me commend you, President Cannon, County Exec Carver, your team, all of the council members for all the hard work you do. But our citizens deserve the best. Our children deserve the best. I'm going to digress to the last council meeting. I was sitting here and I was listening to one of our longtime business owners from Bayland Aviation discuss with you a very serious issue that's going on with regards to whether they're going to remain the leaseholder and be the FBO, which is fixed-based operator at the airport, Salisbury Regional Airport. For the number of years they've been in business, they've paid taxes into the general fund. And I just want to make this clear, I'm not speaking for them or the other party I'm going to mention. But what I do know about the situation, because I did some research, I know that Bayland Aviation provides training and helps in certification of students that are in the professional pilot program at UMES. I've often come before you guys and I've asked that you include the members of the community or the involved parties and sit around whatever tables and have real serious, rigorous conversations about issues. I'm not so sure or certain that that happens. Downstream, the issue is not only just Bayland Aviation. I'm not speaking for UMES either. But what I do know is that program offers the opportunity for aspiring African-American students and any other student that attends UMES to be able to enroll in the professional pilot program, which is, as I understand it, the only one in the state of Maryland. And among all of the thousands of institutions across the nation, it is unique. So I'm asking you, I'm encouraging you to invite parties that are involved in these dynamic situations. And I understand you have structural issues going on, but please do not overlook the talent, the professional capacity of individuals in this community that can help you arrive at real serious strategic decision making. It seems to me, and many in the community, that a lot of people in the community are not considered for what talent, what intellect, and what professional capacity they bring to issues, and they're oftentimes left out. So I'm inviting you and encouraging you to be more open, transparent, and considerate of all sides of issues. Again, I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank the citizens, because actually, all of these guys, they work for you. We pay the taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. If we could for 1 second, Pack 14 does need to change a tape, if we could get that done. You're okay. Thank you. Wayne?
Good evening. I'm Wayne Strasburg, Director of Administration. Donnie, the airport manager is here. President of the Airport Commission is here. They've spoken with Salisbury University, UMES. They've spoken to every professional who knows anything about airports in this community. I would suggest you do the same thing.
How do you know I haven't?
Has he?
Mr. S-
Thank you. Have you spoken to Dawn?
Not yet.
Have you
Wayne-
spoken?
Wayne,
Have you spoken to the chair?
Mr. Strasburg, you may want to have that discussion privately with Mr. Waters, please. Thank you.
And that's my point.
It's okay.
Very disrespectful.
My name is Mary Ashanti, and I'm president of Wicomico County NACP. And I think I told you I wasn't coming back. But I'm glad that Mr. Waters brought that up, and I'll tell you why. When things reach the community, and that did reach the community, I did get a call about that. There was some concern about that. And I'm speaking for the NAACP in the community. I'm not speaking for Bayland or UMES. But the community, when they heard about what's going on and whatever, they had concerns as to what's going to happen to the flight school. The only black, is it right, Mr. Waters, in the state of Maryland, as far as I know. And UMES on the east is the only HBCU, Historical Black College University on the Eastern Shore. So, yes, they're concerned. And the way to allay those concerns is to, in your work session and whatever, anything that has something to do with our tax dollars in your work session on PAC 14, these people need to be around the table talking out loud and letting us hear what's going on. We don't need to hear it through in the back door or anything like that. Because our tax dollars go into the airport, is that right? That's my understanding, right. And it looks like a lot of it. So, since a lot of our money is going into the airport, we want to know what's going on there. And we want to publicly know. We want people to look at PAC 14 and find out what's going on, not wait until they may see something in the paper that they don't even buy. So we're saying keep everything out in the open and bring all the parties to the table and make sure that UMES is one of those parties at the table. I'm not saying that it's not or whatever, but all the parties to the table and have those discussions. You've done it in the past. You've done an excellent job in the past of making the community know what's going on. And I commend you, and I ask you to continue to do that, to make everything transparent. And since I told you I was not going to come up and talk about the budget anymore, I'm going to say it here. You can find the money. I have trust in you. You can find the money to put Mardella back. I'm saying to you, put children first. Cut some of this other stuff out. I'm not going to name the agencies, but cut some of this other stuff out to some of these other people. They're not children. And let them, kick them down the road. But you can come up with the money to put Mardella back in. I believe that. Y'all are smart. You can do it. I have confidence in you.
Thank you, President Shawnee. Any other public comments?
Excuse me? Stop.
At this time, we go to council comments. Councilman Kilmer?
Well, I guess I'll, since there's a lot of Mardella parents in the room, and since I've been in the news recently, I guess I'll start off here. But I do want to start out addressing the Mardella school issue. The first thing that happened when we got on, when I got on the county council was West Salisbury. We all went through that. And the lesson I learned from that was that, we had some cost concerns about what the school was. The executive did, pulled it off the bond sale. But there was a community outcry, there was work together, and the money was found, and it eventually got done. That would be my hope, is a similar path can be followed here. The school up there, you're right, it's old. I spend time in Pemberton and North Salisbury, that's where my children go. Mardella's, not as nice as those schools, that is for certain. So, there's going to be a school at Mardella Springs. I know there had been talk, one of the options was not having the school anymore in that area, and that's not even an option, I think, as far as anyone is ever concerned. And that if that school is going to exist in that area, it needs help. So I think there was an opening. I heard an opening from the county executive. Eileen, you asked me to do what I could do. I'm not trying to throw it all on Bob, but he's the one that submits the CIP. We can't add to it. I wish Bob listened to me more over the years, so, I'd like it if I just suggested something to Bob and he did it, but, yeah, he's been very nice to me since I announced I was leaving, so maybe I've got a little bit of extra. But I think, there's room to work together, the council and the Board of Education and hopefully the executive, but it's like Mrs. Ashante says, President Ashante said, that to find the money, they're going to have to be cuts from elsewhere. The budget concerns that Weston talked about, they are real, they are legitimate. But, I think there's certainly a desire. Mardella Springs rallies, we saw that over a washed out road in Barron Creek, filled that firehouse up. Obviously this is more emotional than a road. I certainly think that Mardella Springs turned out tonight, and, there were a lot of people gone, but the power is more in your hands and more with the community's hands. I'm not going to be a politician here pretty soon, so I'll let you know in a secret. We're not really leaders. We're more followers. And so, as politicians, if there's a community outcry, that's very powerful. And that, the power is in your hands. So thank you for turning up. Thank you for making your voices heard. So I appreciate that. So, and I do try to spend time, in my children's schools. I missed my son's talent show tonight, so I'd like to spend more time. But there are other things that are important, and I'm glad that I was able to be here for one of my last few meetings. So, as you probably all know, my last day will be June 15th, and I'll be here for a few more meetings. I'll be here through the budget time, as Bob reminded me when I talked to him. I'll be here to serve the people of the District 2 through June 15th, and I will still take all your phone calls and all your emails. Received a lot of emails about the school board nominations. I need to get back to quite a few people on that. My phone and email have been pretty busy recently, so I will get back to you all. Thank you for your continued calls and emails on that and the issue of my leaving. But it's been an honor serving. But I'm still serving, so I'm not gonna give a goodbye speech right now, because I'll still be in office till June 15th. But thank you everyone who showed up, and thank you for all your passion. So.
Councilor Hastings. Councilman Hastings.
I will say, I'll be brief, I'm a very, very, very proud Mardella alumni, class 2000, and it makes me even more proud to see the folks that are here. There's a lot of folks that left, but I went to school with Tina. Laura left. Vice Principal Campbell. He and I used to play video games at my house at our farm, and so it's kind of cool to see us all becoming to see how the communities continue to evolve. I will say, very briefly, there's a lot of folks that have already said a lot of things, but in general, our community shouldn't be a race to the bottom when it comes to education. We are still, for what we fund ourselves for Wicomico County, we are still the second lowest in the entire state. If Caroline County has a big year, we are going to be the worst in the entire state. So when it comes to our operating side of actually making sure that we're funding our teacher salaries and making sure that not just Mardella, but so many other communities are just thriving, we can do that. We also need to make sure that we have the special facilities. So it's not okay that we have I've heard the horror stories. I continue to hear them every day. I pay attention to the Facebook feeds. I know what's happening in Mardella and plenty of our other schools. the amount of people that have reached out to me to say that our revenue cap is killing what our schools, and they've reached out to me and say, why are you letting the revenue cap kill Mardella? Well, I can't answer those questions, but what I can say is it's not acceptable to have mildew on your desk when you come in. It's not cool to have dead mice sitting on your desk, which happens recently. You know, just as I've been sitting here, I just saw another school shooting happened in Denver. Mardella has a lot of portables, now 9. It was when I graduated 19 years ago, it was only a couple of them. Safety is a real concern. So in general, if anything, if I could shift the conversation in any way, is that we as Wicomico County have to continue to put education above all else. That's how we are going to thrive. So in closing, I'll just say I'm very proud of all the Mardella folks that have come out here. They are my family, will always be. Even though I no longer represent the area, thank you for all what you do. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Davis?
When I came on, I was, well, first of all, school bus driver, contractor. When I first came on, the big fight was West Salisbury, and one of the things was when I pull up to the school, the kids would come out sweating. I was asking them, I say, we just come from gym. They said, no, we've been sitting in the classroom. Unfortunately, luckily I had air conditioning on the bus, so they get on there and say, oh, it's cool here. I didn't understand why, but now I know why. I did not know Mardella's air did not work. And the same thing, I'm on another bus up at Mardella, and as of today, the kids get on and say, oh, it's nice and cool here. And I was like, what's the problem? Now I know that there's no air in the school. So, like one, I don't know which one spoke that I was a strong advocate for education. I supported West Salisbury. I went all the way up to Annapolis to fight to get the funding. I don't see no reason why we shouldn't do the same for Mardella. I'm also on the building commission. I was one of those that approved the plans for Mardella to go forward with it. So I am one that will fight to help get this school done.
Yeah, a couple comments I'd like to make. I do want to thank all those that came out this evening and made their comments. That's what a democracy is all about. That's what a community is all about. And we are here to listen, and we do hear you. And an individual can make a difference. And all those comments are taken very seriously, and we're going to be spending a lot of time here these next few weeks, trying to make things happen. And I do want to switch gears a little bit. When we started the evening, we recognized our Wicomico County Teacher of the Year, and it was kind of early on in the evening. She actually wasn't here, but I see she's here now. So I would like for our 2019-2020 Teacher of the Year, Shane Morton, to stand to be recognized. And to switch gears a little bit, one last note. I had the privilege last week to recognize a pillar in our community, Colonel Robert Cook. Mr. Cook had his 93rd birthday, and we had a party for him at the YMCA. He's always been very involved at the YMCA, and in fact, we've named the summer camp at the YMCA Camp Cook. And we're going to have a recognition for him in June, but I just did want to reach out and offer his congratulations. I mean, I can go through a long list of contributions he's made to our community over his 93 years, and we've been very fortunate to have him in our community. So, happy birthday, Bob.
I'm cutting his grass this weekend, actually. He's my neighbor.
Yeah, I too would like to thank everybody that came here tonight to speak out on the school system in general, and especially Mardella. Somebody pointed something out to me on social media, which is a great thing at times. Not always, but it is. But somebody pointed out something a couple days ago, maybe last week. There were comments being made and then about Mardella being taken out of the CIP, and then it was all over Facebook, and then I got tons of emails, and it was quite interesting. But I'm glad you guys are here tonight to speak, because when you speak, we listen. Ms. Hastings was talking about no parking at Mardella. I was there a couple weeks ago with the middle school baseball and softball, and I'm guilty. I parked where I wasn't supposed to, and I've done that numerous times. Just pray my truck was sitting there when I came back. But I have been there to soccer games, baseball games, softball games, and somebody made the comment about all of us need to spend 2 hours in the schools. There was a time, you can ask Mr. Ford, that when the new council came on, the Board of Ed set up tours for all the schools. They would get the vans, and all the board members and council, not all the board members, but the council members would go to every single school, and they would spend time in all the schools. And I would like to see that brought up again. If you want to start anytime soon, I'll go on those tours again. I've been to every single school. I've been to the schools that aren't even there any longer. My kids went to the old Bennett Middle. Miss Hastings, she was the principal, so good times, good memories. Like Mr. Fitzgerald, I think it was 2009, we came on the Board of Ed together. He said that he represents all of Wicomico County. I think every one of the board members up here feel that way after we're elected. We represent all the kids, the parents, the teachers, everybody. If you're in the district, you only get voted on, but once you get sworn in, you represent everybody. And you guys are here tonight. We listen, at least I listen, and Mr. Culver, I hope we can collaborate on this. So, thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Dodd. Joe.
Yes, I want to thank everyone tonight that came in. I often say when people ask me, how do you get something done or get attention in the county, I say heads count, bring people. That's the way it happens. And that's how your voices are heard. Sometimes one voice doesn't do the job. Pittsville had a strawberry festival, the first one this past Saturday, which was quite successful, and I'm sure they will build on that in the future. So keep an eye out for that next year. Bill mentioned Mr. Cook, or Colonel, right? Colonel Bob Cook. I had the opportunity to do an interview with him. He's a World War II veteran. And I had an opportunity to do an interview with him on PAC 14. You can look it up, and it's on YouTube, or I guess you can go to their site, I suppose. I've got a copy of it. But anyway, it was interesting, what he went through and the stories he had to tell was real interesting. He had the same uniform on that he had when he was in World War II. So he's kept himself in pretty good shape, too, along the way. And maybe it was a different uniform, but I think he emphasized it was the same size. Maybe that's what it was. But anyway, quite a gentleman, and he's been very instrumental in a lot of things that's gone on in Wicomico County over the years. So I think it's an honor to have him as a citizen. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Under presidential comments, I'd also like to emphasize, similar to what Councilman McCain said, it's always great to see a huge packed room. That's always nice. I mean, that's how we really get our feedback from the community, and we really appreciate everybody's here. Even elected officials sometimes are very wary of public speaking. So when individuals come up to the mic and they actually can speak to, as eloquently as they do, that's very commendable, because it is very hard. So we appreciate everybody that took the time to come up and talk. I would say, too, Principal Hastings and the teachers and the parents should be very proud for the kids that got up here and talked. Fantastic. So
Did you notice they didn't have any prepared?
I know. They outdid every one of us. But as Councilman Kilmer stated, the County Council cannot add to this capital improvement plan. That's going to have to come from the Executive's office. But we still have until June 4th to try to get this all back together. I've never seen an entire school project pulled from a CIP. I was as surprised, I think the council members were as surprised as anyone in this room when we saw that taken out. But from tonight, and that's the purpose of public hearings, to get a real feel for what's going on out there. I think we recognize that there are many problems that need to be addressed, and sooner than later. I would suggest that, as a worst case scenario, just shifting the planning that we had previously from fiscal year 20 to 23, shifting that to the 21-24. That would move that 700,000 from something that would be obligated this coming year to the next year. But it keeps it in the plan, and it keeps the project alive, and I think that's important. I think that's important locally, and I think that's important so that we can keep it on the state queue. Because if the state sees that we've pulled Mardella, you have no idea what they're going to do or how far down the list Mardella is going to go in the next few years. So I'd like to see it put back in, moved 1 year forward, so that at least the state recognizes that this is still an important project to Wicomico County. Mrs. Robinstein, you spoke, and we appreciate that. Mr. Robinstein, you and I spoke about 6 or 8 months ago at Mardella. I remember that. It was funny because the one thing I noted was that you chose to come here. And you had specifically said, we chose the Mardella's area because we really like it and the school's great. And I'm sitting there thinking, my God, I just ran into one of these official come-heres that we're trying to get all the time, you know? And we have you here and your family. And we don't want to let you down as far as Wicomico County is concerned. Because we really do appreciate you, putting your confidence in this county and this school in this area. So, I don't think it's a difficult fix. Mr. King had suggested when he spoke earlier that there's never a right time, and that couldn't be truer. But he also said sometimes you have to make it happen. And I think that is very true, and I think it can be done. But then again, we have to depend on the executive and Weston and Mr. Strasburg to see how we maybe can put this back together, get it back to the council in time. And as I said before, we won't be voting on it and finalizing this until June 4th. So let's see what happens with the great input that we had tonight. Okay, and I thank the Board of Education, Dr. Howland, for also being here for their support tonight. Thank you very much. Now, with that being said, it's up to me to adjourn the meeting. Entertain a motion to adjourn from legislative session to go into open work sessions, followed by closed work sessions pursuant to general provisions, Articles Section 3-301, B1 and B3 as follows. And you thought the public hearings went long.
Yeah, we're just starting.
Here we go. To discuss and compare the qualifications of the Board of Education nominees in closed session for the privacy of the individuals, to discuss the acquisition of real property for recreational uses in closed session to prevent the disclosure of confidential information, and to discuss a legal personnel matter in closed session for the protection of the privacy of the individual. It's a motion.
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned. We're going to take a 5-minute recess if we could. Thank you all very much. Hey. First item on the, let's go. Either sit down, move out, or whatever you'd like to do. But we got to run a meeting. Oh, don't you?
It's on you.
All right, how's everybody? I guess we're good here. First item on the open work session agenda is the proposed amendment to reallocate $947,000 and change in the fiscal year's 2019-23 CIP from various airport projects. Dawn, I'm assuming you're going to be here, right? Come on up. We'll get started.
Y'all need to get your air conditioning fixed.
You hungry, Josh?
I said, y'all need to get y'all's air conditioning fixed. It's hot with that many people in here.
If you could just state your name and your title or position, that would be great for us for
Certainly.
PAC 14.
My name is Dawn Veatch. I'm the airport manager at Salisbury Regional Airport.
Calvin Peacock, Chairman of the Airport Aviation Commission.
Glad to have you here. Dawn, if you'd like to lead us
Okay.
first. Thank
All
you.
right, and you've all had a copy of this that was sent and read that? Okay.
Yes.
So I'll walk through this. We had two projects in our CIP for this year in 19. One was the ARF building and the other one was the UAS hangar. Both of those were funded, and they were funded at $900,000 for the ARF building and then $750,000 for the UAS hangar. Both of those came in severely under budgeted. So the ARF building, we are choosing, currently we've spent $238,000 on the ARF. That was to get it designed and to do the subsoil structure surveys, to do core sampling for contaminants, and I don't know what else is in that. But anyway, the $238,000 that was spent in doing the design has now told me that when I got my quote the year before on what it would cost me to build this structure is about half. So we decided we would push it out because the water isn't here yet. The water bid just went out, I think. I'm sorry, I haven't had time with the FAA inspection and my airport master plan to follow when the water went out, but I believe it went out for bid. So it'll be about a year before that water will hit where we can use it for our fire station. So what I did was in my FAA, you got to remember the timing, this was put in a year and a half ago. So I put in my ACIP for FAA and in the MAA additional funds for this coming year, which is we'll stay in county fiscal year, for county fiscal year 2020 to fund the ARF building. We also submitted to FAA on October, I think it was 18th, another request for a fully funded ARF building to include design, which would be reimbursed to the county, under the supplemental discretionary $10 billion that was given out last June. We've still not heard from that, so we're waiting to hear if they fund that. So if they fund it, regardless of whether we go ahead and build it now, then it would reimburse us for that, which is what we always try to do with FAA and MAA. MAA has not had much money lately, and so all that money goes, I'm not sure where it goes, but anyway, I don't usually get much of it the last couple of years. So with that left $661,000 and change out of the ARF if we postpone it. So the second building that was sorely underestimated, which again was about by half, part of that is due to the fact that when we went to put the build site in, MDE came out and told us the build site was wetland. So we couldn't build there. So we had to get another site. The next site is more expensive to build because we have to put a road in that's longer than the one from the cul-de-sac where it originally was located to where the new site is. And what we did when we rebid it on the new site was we reduced the size of the hangar to try to offset some of that cost. And then we also, unfortunately, it required a larger piece of asphalt pad, which actually costs more. And then the sewer costs more because of where they have to tap in. It wasn't a short run, it's a very long run now to get to the sewer. So that's where some of the overages came, but the bulk of it was just a poor estimate that was done in my office. So when we were here the last time talking about overages, I said, I will not ask for money anymore without doing design first, because I'm not getting proper estimates from people that should be able to give me a proper estimate. So we need to know what it's really going to cost before we come to council for money.
Questions from anyone? Mark?
So as I understand it, the ARF building, you're asking for the funding to be reallocated, but in future years, there's going to be a more expensive ARF building asked for from this council. So it's, okay, all right. So that cost is going to come next year or year after, something like that?
Hopefully, either MAA or FAA will fund it, and then we pay the proportionate share. So if MAA funds it, we pay 25%. If FAA funds it, we pay 5%. That can be paid for out of PFCs, that share. So, and I could fund the entire ARF facility under PFCs. It's just the process we're in right now. We just did PFC 5. That's obligated up for the next few years. The ARF building, in order to have another airline, Piedmont cannot be our ARF. And quite frankly, now that we've got a professional ARF service in there, and our trucks are being maintained properly now, and we have people that know what they're doing with the trucks, we're getting things back in service the way they should be. The ARF should never have been in Piedmont's hangar. They have airplanes parked in front of them sometimes, and the doors are huge and they don't open quickly. So we've got the ARF in a temporary hangar right now. And we've got 2 of them in there, actually, 2 fire trucks. BWI gave us one this winter when ours went down, and we couldn't get it fixed within 48 hours. So
Is it fixed now?
our ARF, yes, it is.
That's why you have 2.
And they ended up giving us theirs that they were, well, the one they gave us initially was their loaner. They loaned it to us. It's their backup. They have extra backups to backups. And so I got that one in a pinch, and then with some of Calvin's help too. And then they actually had one that they were getting ready to auction off, and they were able to divert it to us. It requires $30,000 worth of things to be done to it before it can stand alone as an ARF. It goes fine as a backup or as an emergency if ours goes down for a short time, but it can't do everything right now. So that $30,000 is in my operating budget that was just put in this spring. So the ARF was, to us, hoping that we could get FAA to fund it and some things like that, and pushing MAA to fund it. If we start it, they're not as apt to fund it. And since we don't have the water and we can't open the firehouse until we have water pressure for the fire extinguishing system. So we're kind of at a catch-22 here. If I start building now, it'll be done by next spring, and we're not going to have water for, almost 18 months.
Is that the only holdup, the fire sprinkler system?
Yes, sir.
And
the extra funding.
You can't use a jockey pump to get that pressure?
Not without putting a subsystem in, from my understanding, a holding tank that's very expensive.
And you don't have a water tower there now?
No, sir. The water tower's at Warwick. So we don't have any water. Pardon?
There are large lines coming from that tower.
When they put them in, they're not in yet.
They're not in yet?
We don't have water at the airport. We never have. They put city sewer, they put sewer in years and years ago, but they never put water in. So they're putting the water in now, which is allowing the airport to get developed. Before, you couldn't build anything more than 10,000 square feet because you didn't have water to do the proper systems for fire suppression.
Exactly.
So did the original budget being $750,000, correct?
For the drone hangar, yes, sir.
The drone hangar. So does that mean that now the total cost, that the increase is around $900 on the one project? What is, when you put in here, the selected company has quote to build 1.2, that's an estimate there?
No, that's what they have been awarded to build. We don't have funding, so we haven't started yet. So the projects that I asked for the residuals to be pulled together, we had been awarded the money for STARS and ADSB, and if you recall, the FAA said, oh, sorry, we don't do STARS anymore. Easton got theirs, but you don't get yours. So that's what that money is left over from, okay? So there's $70,000 out of the ADSB money that I was asking to use to go towards this project. Because we didn't put the ADSB in because we didn't get the STARS. And that's complicated, and I'm happy to go into detail if you want. The hangar apron and painting that we're doing right now, if you recall, we redid the taxi lanes and the ramps in front of the corporate hangars, and we painted all the hangars. Started last fall. We had to fire the first contractor. We have our second contractor out there. And because they had, the lowest bidder came in, he is about $165,000 under because we didn't have one piece of pavement done, and then we didn't paint the ARF hangar and the hangar adjacent to it because they're going to move that across the airport, so my staff has a proper maintenance facility. And we chose not to paint them because it'll crack when they put it on jacks and move it. So we took that out. So that left a little residual there. So these residuals that are coming out of these programs pulled together along with the engineered value engineering that was done on the contract. And some of that was done with doing core sampling to see if you had to use, and I'm sorry, I'm not an engineer, but that you use some sort of cement-based subsoil treatment, I think is what it is. Is what I understood it to be in wetlands, so that your soil then is not mucky and while you're trying to build, and it also provides a better sub-base for when you do bring in your crushed rocks and gravels and things like that. So because of the nature of that industrial park, it was in the bid to do that, but then when we did the soil samples, when we relocated it, it was no longer required. So there were some savings in here, but there was also some additional costs. We reduced some of the taxi apron area. I forget what all we pulled out of there that we could to help bring the price down. I also reduced the size of the hangar on the second bid. And so we did what we could to get it down, but it's still, cost of steel went up since this was guesstimated a year and a half ago.
Trying to do total recall, which is almost impossible for me now. What did you say as far as this project? There's not a leasing agreement with the company that's going to move in here. Am I correct?
There's a concession agreement.
But there's a concession agreement. Was that like a $5,000 a month or something? What was the
It's a
the
percent.
maximum?
It's a percent, and it's I don't remember either. I think the max is something like $3,200 because they're only taking part of the building.
Okay.
I have a lease that will be signed once the building is built.
I was just trying to evaluate the return.
Right, I'm getting ready to finish some more, though, on that. And then we've got the second side is going to be rented by Kilroy. Now, Kilroy's in my airline office that doesn't have windows at the ticket counter right now because it's the only office space I had. Then they wanted to be at the airport because they do a lot of other services for the flying public and maintenance and repairs and
What do you
things.
anticipate the total return may be, the total revenue you might be looking at maybe on an annual basis?
I'm guessing, because Salisbury University wants the whole second floor. They
Okay.
just came to me. They're coming back with a written proposal, and then they want to build a second building because they want to move their robotics and their drone and their agricultural drone into the other building. So I haven't added it all up yet because until I get the building, I don't even know what it's going to cost yet. I mean, I don't even know if we're building it. I mean, at this point, because I don't have the funding. And so, but it would be, if they paid 3,000, well, theirs is a percent, the concession is a percent of gross profit. And if you remember on the budget on that, this is going to create 53 jobs, this, putting this facility in. Next door to it is
Which
a
is
manufacturing plant
Right.
that is supposed to go in, that is, I don't know if y'all have even seen any of this stuff, or if you want to. I was going to bring.
Yeah, because it's not so much just the reallocation. Reallocation is what it is. The reason I asked my question is because outside of reallocation, it's really, we're seeing additional spending that we're going to be incurring over the next few years because we're sort of stretching the expense of the project out over more years, because we may be reallocating from the ARF, but it's still going to be an expense we have to worry about in the future.
Understood.
Yeah.
Kel?
So,
Sorry, that one's for you. That's your master. That's your master.
what?
I think that's your master.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, I'm about to check myself with that. So, if you look in the center where it says UAS, the original hangar was going to be on the top of the white box that says UAS, that one on the top up by the cul-de-sac. And I apologize, my copier is being replaced next fiscal year. It doesn't copy very well right now. But that box just above the white block is where the drone facility was supposed to be built, okay? So just right up here. Does everybody see that?
Okay.
That corner? Right up there, that little corner, okay? It was near the cul-de-sac, and so that's where the sewer is, and that's where the water will be coming in, and things like that. They determined that that was wetland. Now, we've done an extensive study in there, and they've determined it's delineated wetland, but that didn't get undelineated. I know that's not a word, but
What is it, non-tidal wetland?
it looks like this. So the hash marks are where we can build, and the other ones you can't build without doing mitigation. So we're in the process of that mitigation. What is it? If anybody wants a copy, I can leave you a copy. So anyway, when we relocated it, that's in addition to what cost it. I can give
So
you.
you don't really know where it's at, going to be built yet?
Yes, I have a building.
I thought you said you were just in the process of relocating.
No, sir. I have a building, I have a 25-foot MDE permit to build. Barrier permit is what we did. We put it in the middle of a taxiway is what we did. That was never built. They cleared, if you, for that, because I know some of y'all have not been out there. I brought some visuals.
You won't need that taxiway in the future?
We would have used it, but it's just a piece of it that it took it up. I'm looking for the aerial shot.
So are you going to
There.
relocate it, or you just don't need it?
The taxiway?
The taxiway.
It cuts it off. This is, if you can see that, see the trees where they were cleared? Because there's no trees there, and it has subsoil that was brought in many years ago, in the early 80s or whatever. They determined that none of that is wetland. So I can build there. So I took the back corner of that little piece, and we put our drone hangar there. And then the manufacturing plant would go over here on this side, because it's delineated as not being wetland. It's storm, what do they call that? Uplands. Yeah,
Okay.
uplands. So that has already been FAA approved. This has already been MDE approved. The contract has been awarded, waiting funding. And then they're working on getting their permits, the county construction type permits. So,
Don, on your budget here, it says cost to bring sewer and water well, $83,640. When it says water well, what does that mean?
the water's not there yet, won't be for 18 months. So they have to put a well in.
So you're
Our
gonna-
water's not potable at the
Yeah,
airport.
So you're gonna dig a well to operate this facility off of until.
Just
until
like
it
we do
works.
everything at the
Yeah.
airport.
Oh, okay.
So
And then when the water gets there,
it'll tap in,
it'll tap in.
and it'll be metered.
How much of that 83,000 is the well?
I didn't bring those breakdowns.
I would assume that's less than 10,000 of that?
Yeah, it wasn't much. The well wasn't much,
Usually
because the water's not
7,500 for a well
potable.
or something.
Huh?
Usually like 7,500 for a well, give or take.
Well, it depends on how big a well they need.
Yeah.
You know.
How
They
deep
don't
you gotta
need,
go.
the only thing they need a well for is to flush 2 sets of toilets,
No
men.
fire suppression or anything?
No
like that?
fire suppression. The hangar was purposely built smaller, so fire suppression is not required. So it's hand sink, a wash station if somebody gets contaminated with some sort of solvent or chemical or something, and toilets, and that's all the water we need.
Now, we're paying, so we're paying 70,000 to bring the sewer in. If, we'll take 13,000 off of the well, that'd probably be the maximum, right?
Not a well digger.
I'm not a
Maybe,
well digger
okay.
either.
So anybody, I know how it works in other places, so if we build a manufacturing plant between there and they connect to the sewer, will they be paying part of that?
When the manufacturing plant goes in, the water will be here.
No, I'm talking about the sewer, will they pay for part of that sewer hookup?
They'll pay for all of it because it's going to be a land lease. The county isn't going to build that.
No, I'm not saying that, will they
Oh, I'm
help pay
sorry.
for part of this 70,000 when the manufacturing plant goes in? Would they?
For
would they
this,
pay-
I'm sorry, for the sewer?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? No, because the sewer is in a different spot.
So they would have to, they'd have to
See,
run
the
sewer to it.
manufacturing,
They'd have to run, you don't have to pull it out, that's fine.
yeah, the manufacturing plant's on the other side, if you look
So
on
they'll
there.
have to pay for sewer.
They will pay for sewer. They will do a land lease, and that's it, and they will do everything. There won't be any expense to us. It's all to them to build on a land lease.
Well, you mentioned Salisbury University a few minutes ago, but we will be building the building for them. They won't be building.
No, they'll be building the
They will.
building. What they want to do is rent the second floor, and there's a schematic
Well, I think it's,
of the floor plans.
I think it's terribly unfortunate that we run into such an overage. I can understand that. I mean, you've explained it, and I think what's important is that you're making whatever efforts you can to reallocate funds to make this project happen. And I think that's, in my impression, that's what we need to do. I think that this is going to be a good revenue builder. I think it's going to be, as you said, it's going to be a job creation, which is important. And I think all losses aside, which we can't, there's not much we can do to recapture that. But I think, this is the best effort that you're making to try to help keep this project going forward, and I think that we should support you on that.
Do we need a motion to move it forward?
It's just a work session.
Yeah,
It'll be good. Yeah, it'll be good. It'll
So one thing, I just want to refresh y'all's memory from the last time I briefed on the drones. And this was also briefed at the Salisbury Economic Forecast Office. But the jobs that are generated to be created there or because the manufacturing plant doesn't come if there's not a drone facility to test, okay? So the manufacturing plant, I don't have a letter of intent yet. I have met with them twice. So, but they're very interested. They're outgrowing their current building. But with that would be 6.7 million in revenue for businesses and 3.9 in personal revenue and 5.5 million in state and local taxes. And that's just with my building. That's not the calculation on what the manufacturing will do, because I haven't run what the manufacturing will do. But that's just an example, and those numbers were created by Martin and Associates. If you, Maryland MDOT does a economic forecast every year for all the airports, and that's the consultant firm that they use. And while they were updating the state's aviation economic forecast, I gave them these 3 companies. I gave them the FEMA cargo facility, I gave them the new fixed base operator, and I gave them this.
So there are 53 permanent jobs?
Yeah, it would be 53 permanent, high-paying tech jobs.
Did they include the construction jobs building a facility?
Yeah, they do all that. It's direct and indirect jobs that are created, and then also there's also a shopping number in there of what people spend that it increases.
Do you think you'll be able to get a letter of intent by the time we redirect these funds?
No, sir.
You won't be able to?
No, sir.
Mrs. Hurley, and sort of like what Mr. McCain said, where does this process go from here?
This is in the capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2019 through 2023. So it requires a public hearing to amend that plan.
So we would be amending the plan that's almost, the capital improvement
Almost
plan that's almost
That is correct.
done, right?
Yes.
Almost finished.
And we can hold that public hearing at the next council meeting
Okay.
on May 21st at 10 a.m.
Let's do it.
I think we need to have the hearing.
Any other questions?
Well, I do have one. You said you couldn't get a letter of intent. Is it not that far along, or your discussions with the manufacturer that's going to build there? Or?
I can't get a letter of intent that quickly, no, sir.
So how long?
It's proprietary, and so there's certain things, just like when y'all met with SRS before when we were under non-disclosure, those things take a little bit more time than what I'm hoping for, 2 or 3 weeks to get this moved forward. I mean, the fiscal year in the summer's almost over. I mean, I know, so I'm trying to get the project moving.
Well, my concern is, and I understand the value of the airport, and, I listened to all, the folks come up and talk about it, and how important it is as an economic driver for the county. But my concern is what we're hearing is just, we got these people coming, and we got these people coming, and we got these people coming, but we don't have any letters of intent or no signed papers, no signed leases, and
Well, I do for this building.
for which building?
The one we're talking about, the drone building, I have the concession agreement with SRS, that has been executed.
Okay.
I have Kilroy, which I've got them in the office at the airport now. They're just waiting until we design the floor plan, because we haven't designed the interior floor plan yet, because I haven't got the money yet. So that includes designing, that price includes designing the floor plan. Correct, because they don't know how many square feet. I don't know how much to charge them till I know how many square feet. So once I have that, then I'll have, and it's all going to be what our standard rate is out there. I have an appraisal that gave me what the going rate should be at the airport, and so it'll all be in line with that. So.
Any questions? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for the presentation.
All right. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Ms. Hurley, you'll have that on the schedule?
Yes.
Thank you. Where the heck were we?
We got a great big grant we paid like $40,000 or $50,000 for out there to load people in airplanes, and then the airplane flew out.
The next item on the work session is discussion on the confirmation of department heads. Mr. Taylor.
Yeah. Let me review real briefly how we got here, why we're here tonight on this. As everybody probably knows, Mr. Culver has apparently declined to make appointments of department heads pursuant to the charter. When I say pursuant to the charter, I'm talking about the sections that require that he, after each election of the county executive, each county election, if you will, that within 6 months of the election, the county executive it's not optional, it's mandatory, according to the language. Submit.
Could you pull the mic closer to you, Bob?
Yeah, submit appointments for all of the department heads, and that has not occurred. The 6-month deadline happens to be today. I guess he could still come in at this meeting and do it, but let's assume he's not going to do that for the purpose of discussion. As you probably also know, in last week's newspaper, there was a fairly extensive article, The Independent, where he elaborated his argument that somehow in last year's referendum vote to amend the charter, and when I say amend the charter, I'm talking about adding some additional positions to that group of positions that have to be appointed after every election. That under his view of it, somehow that changed the charter, so he doesn't have to appoint the department heads anymore. Well, at the last meeting, we kind of got into this with Mr. Wilbur. He's advised that that's not the case, that the amendment that was passed last year adds these various offices, doesn't take anybody out, so it didn't remove the department heads. But as a result of that article, I just went ahead and did a very short memorandum, just analyzing his, by that I mean Mr. Culver's, argument that somehow it changed the charter. And even if Mr. Wilbur and I were wrong on our version of, or our interpretation of the amendment last year, what was on the table, by that I mean the ballot question that was on before the voters last November, couldn't have removed anyone, because that wasn't part of the council's resolutions that started the process to amend the charter that resulted in the ballot question. So it wasn't within the cards. What was before the voters was either to vote up or down on the amendment that council had proposed, not to do anything else. So I just want to kind of briefly hit that before we get into where we should go. That's why we're here. In my view, the council should try as best it can to conform to the charter and proceed as the charter lays out. Now, I understand the amendments, the appointments have not been presented, but I think in this particular instance, it would be appropriate and reasonable to assume that whoever is now serving as a department head is essentially his appointee. By that I mean Mr. Culver's appointee. They're serving at his pleasure, and the only thing that he hasn't done is turn in a list of the names. Well, you can figure out who the names are. So in my view, the council should take the next step under the charter, which is confirmation or rejection of the department heads. And that's, I think, where we should go. It's logical to proceed as closely as you can to the charter's mandates and plan for how department heads are to be appointed after every election and confirmed or rejected by the council. So that would be the next step, in my view, would be for the council to consider the department heads that are in place as essentially his nominees and pass on them in the same manner as if he had appointed them tonight.
So what time frame are you saying that needs to be done?
Well, normally, the charter provides a 45-day window. In other words, if he had made the appointments on the 1st of January, the council would have had 45 days to confirm or reject them.
But the council also says it has to be done in 6 months, which is today.
Well, that's right.
I mean,
That's
charter.
right, but the 45 days is additive to whenever he appoints them. So it would be additive from tonight if you're going to assume that it's like he's making the appointments tonight.
6 months to make the appointments, and then 45 days to
Yeah.
confirm it.
Yeah, this is the end of the 6-month period, not the 45 days.
Right.
So the charter says that he's to present them to us, right? By
Correct.
him,
Mhm.
with whatever the language is.
Yeah.
So he's not done that. Now, is that going to create any conflict by us just going, do you see any conflict created by us just skipping that step? Because we're not skipping it, he is, I guess.
Well, I don't for this reason, because the charter sets out a process. In other words, there are supposed to be appointments to be confirmed or rejected by the council. We know, or at least I think it's a fair assumption, that there are department heads in place right now that, they're his appointees, in other words. They're in that position
Well,
because he's
we
appointed
actually
them.
he appointed them and we confirmed them the last time.
What Bob is saying is the fact that they are working in that position
Yeah.
is the same as an appointment.
Yeah, in other words, the only thing he hasn't done is turn in a piece of paper with the names on them.
And the sad thing is, these folks are out here kind of in limbo, you know.
Well, and that's another reason. Yeah,
They
that's
don't know
another
whether-
reason, to assure the people who are
Right,
appointed
right.
that everything's going to go on as if he had made the appointments and council had acted on them, because council would have
I'm actually
acted on
kind of
them.
surprised we haven't lost somebody because of it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, Joe, the problem's gonna come if we reject anybody. That's,
Well, I understand that.
if we approve them, they're gonna go on. But if,
Yeah, yeah.
there's, that person's legal status as a department head, I think would be highly questionable if they continued to serve if we rejected them.
So we follow your process, Mr. Taylor. We either approve or reject the individuals who are in these different positions. What happens following that? Because I don't anticipate much will change from the executive branch. Where does that follow? Because then if we have rejected any of them, I'm assuming they're still going to be on the payroll, they're still going to be getting paid. Exactly how do we address that? Because that's the
Well,
key issue.
Yeah, and this is addressed in the memorandum I submitted to council
Understand.
earlier. Excuse me. I think that what happened there is that once they're rejected, that they no longer are entitled to serve. I know there's a doctrine called the de facto officer doctrine, and we talked about that at the last meeting. But I think that that would not apply in a situation that we have under our charter, where we have this process of appointment for confirmation or rejection. In other words, there's a discrete time period that an appointment runs for, even if it's been confirmed by council. So that somebody, if they had been approved and confirmed by council after the last election, not the election last fall, but the one 4 years before that, then their term would essentially end at the end of this 6-month plus 45 days period.
Right, so we make our decision, and we choose hypothetically not to appoint an individual, 2 individuals, 3, whatever that circumstance might be. What happens the next day when that employee shows up for work?
In my opinion, they're not entitled to their position. There is a case in Maryland some years ago in a somewhat similar situation. It involved a municipality, not a county, where the police force was appointed every year. And I would just make a historical comment, that's not unusual for back in the day. It was often that every police officer in a municipality had to be reappointed every year. And in this case, confirmed by the town council. The mayor appointed several people. Some of them were approved by the council, some of them were rejected. Went to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals said the ones that were rejected were not entitled to serve. So that's pretty close to what we have here on the situation you just mentioned.
So if we were to reject anyone and that individual came to work the very next day, then we're going to court, correct?
Well, I don't think necessarily you have to go to court. I believe that what could be done to avoid that, and I mentioned, I think this at the last meeting, is that you could put a condition in your budget next year, the 2020 budget, that funds cannot be paid to anyone who has not been duly confirmed as a department head.
But we can't make itemized cuts. We have a salaries category.
I agree, that's not a cut, that's a condition. And
Okay,
and,
so
and
you're
there's been several cases in Maryland that have
So you're
upheld,
saying
yeah.
by law, we could fund the position, but still put a restriction on the expenditure?
Right. In other words, if someone was, we're only talking now about people who would be rejected. After that, if someone was duly appointed to that particular department head, then the money could be paid. Their salary could be paid. But it could not be paid to somebody who's not been properly confirmed.
So, Mr. Taylor, I'm sitting here trying to digest this. I'm an attorney. I've been involved in politics for a long time, and I think this is the first time I've ever come across a situation like this as far as appointments. And I want to stress that Mr. Cannon, President Cannon, stated the situation hypothetical. That's what we're discussing right now, a hypothetical situation. So what happens at the day of termination? And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but what happens if a person is paid?
Well, I think if you put the condition in the budget that they can't expend money that way for that particular person, I think that's an improper expenditure of the appropriated funds.
So a transfer couldn't
I
happen?
will point out to you that, and this has been a while, but it was back in the 40s, that county treasurer, in fact, it was this county, was prosecuted for making improper payments, removed from office and convicted of a misdemeanor.
So were some of the council.
So, I mean, there is some muscle here if needed.
It's an unfortunate situation.
I agree. It's very unusual.
Well, I'm glad you helped us with that, because honestly, I think putting the restriction on the funding is much more beneficial if we have to go in any direction such as this than playing this out in the courtroom. The last thing I'd want to do is see the county taking the county to court. I mean, it should never be this way.
I couldn't agree more.
Okay. Any other questions from council?
I'll just make a statement, we shouldn't even be having this conversation because it should have been done properly to begin with. We should have got the appointment list and been able to do what we're supposed to do.
Joe, we got the appointment list in December.
Yeah, I know, but they
Then it was
took it
withdrawn.
back.
It was retracted.
So the idea that it was all of a sudden it's against the charter now to do that.
I understand.
Seems undercut by the fact that we got it in December.
Yeah.
So,
Especially after we confirmed 2 positions.
yeah, I thought it was fine back in December, but now it's not.
I don't
I mean,
understand.
there's often the case, in not just in government, but in life, where maybe you don't like the way things are going to go, but you're still obligated to follow the law and abide by the law.
Yeah, I mean, this is the charter.
Yeah, right.
And to be clear, we go from today. We're assuming these are de facto appointees, and we have 45 days to confirm. Is that correct?
Yeah, you have a 45-day window if you, for example, if you made your confirmations and/or rejections at the next meeting, then that 45 days, of course, will be truncated to the next meeting.
So as of midnight tonight, there's a violation in the charter.
Looks that way to me.
So is it legal for us to assume, and I'm just going to use that term because I don't know legal jargon, is it legal for us to assume that the current employees or department heads that need to be appointed, that is the appointment?
I would certainly think that would be. I might correct one thing you said, a violation of the charter. I would call it more non-compliance with the charter. What the charter says is that he's to make the appointments, and he hasn't done it. I mean, you can look at it different ways. I'd call it non-compliance.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Appreciate it. I know it's been a lot of work on your part. We appreciate that. Entertain a motion to adjourn to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
It's adjourned.